Oh, right. I didn't realise I'd clicked that button. Right, so I've got this one today. Good afternoon, everybody. I've got this one today. It's one I've been doing for Melbourne Zoo, and I've called it The Connection. They're hoping to auction it for fighting extinction at some point. They're wanting to auction it at a VIP ball, so goodness knows when that'll be with everything that's going on at the moment. So I've taken my time with it, really. It's been a bit of a weird one because I haven't got the eyes to focus on. So what I've been doing is really sort of focusing on the fur texture. What I want to do is like make this quite light, and then everything to the side fades off and goes quite dark, so it's a bit like you've got a spotlight on the centre. And I called it The Connection because I painted Miska, which is this one, when she was a cub at Safari Zoo in Dalton, which is just up the road from me. And it was from a reference by Holly Gordon. And it was in my calendar last year, which was shown at Melbourne Zoo. And that's when they got in touch, and that's where the connection is. Plus, when she was sent to Melbourne Zoo for their breeding programme to be a mate for Kangju, which is this one, you know, this was a connection there as well between the two of them. That's why I called it The Connection, really. And I quite like the fact that she's come from Dalton Zoo. She's a very, very beautiful snow leopard, and I got sent a video of her this week by my cousin because they've just come up out of lockdown and they can see them all again. So that was nice to see as well. One day I hope to get to see her again out there, but we shall see. So what I've done with this, I have oiled my canvas first, and all I did was dabbed a load of linseed oil on with this big brush all over. So it was like saturated with linseed oil. And then I took some kitchen roll, ordinary kitchen roll. I suppose I would have taken rags really, but as you know, my dogs lay in my rag box. So if I take rags all over, I'll get dog hair all over, which I don't want. And all I did was just take that kitchen roll all over and take the excess of the oil off. You don't want it swimming in oil. It's a bit like watercolours when you wet a piece of paper. If there's too much water on it, when you put your paint on, it'll just spider all over. And it's exactly the same with this. If you put too much oil on, or if you don't knock your oil back, when you put your paint on, it'll just slide all over, which you don't want. You want it to get a grip. But it just allows you, doing it this way, to get a bit of the detail on and this canvas not suck it up too much. You know, it allows you to get that softness as well. So I've done that before, and I've oiled the whole lot because I don't know which parts I'm going to be working on. Obviously, if you're just going to be working on certain parts, you could oil that up, just those little parts you're going to be working on. but I don't know where this will take me, so I just did the whole thing. I haven't done this. You can see my underpainting here. That's my underpainting colour. That's the raw umber there. These are just black of the that fast drying oil, whatever it's called, I can't remember. Just to mark out where all the markings are. And then I've done a little bit of detail on here. What I've done, I've looked at the pattern on the reference photograph and just did the pattern with a light colour. That's all. The bits in between you can see are the actual colour of the raw umber which I tinted the canvas with. So I haven't done much to that. Just let me I usually use Winsor & Newton. I'm a bit bad really because I don't go for any others, but I tell you what, I am leaning towards Michael Harding oil paints. I'm going to try. And what else? I've got one here. And Langridge oil paints I've heard quite a lot about, so I'm going to try that. I do get a lot of oil paints given, bits and pieces that have been left to people. So I've got a big box which I do go through and I do use, so I'm very grateful for that because, I mean, as you know, paint is expensive. Anything is expensive really. So what I'm going to do today, we're going to do this a little bit here. As I said before, you can see this is very crude, especially here. It's just lines, thick lines of a light colour to indicate sections and the way the fur's going. Snow leopards have got a really weird sort of fur pattern. They have a really dense undercoat and like an outer coat that comes through it, I think, that's quite thin. But the undercoat, of course, is really plush and thick, which is good for the habitat where they're from. They're not like any other fur you do, you know, so don't try and do them just like anything else. They really have got a plush undercoat. I've started putting a little bit of colour on there. I've done it quite light, so it's all a little bit chalky, I call it. I know Sarah doesn't know what chalky means. It means it's light, but it's like a see-through white, so it looks chalky. That's all I can describe it as, really. And when I look at my reference photograph of them, they've got a little bit of a yellow tinge to it. So I've got a little bit of yellow ochre, because I don't want a bright yellow. I want a little bit of a muted yellow. So I'm using a yellow ochre. And all I'm doing, I've put a little bit of white spirit with it, so it's see-through. And I'm just, you see how it just changes it? That's a glaze. That's what you call a glaze. And then at the top, it's a little bit bluer actually, so I'm going to put some ultramarine out, which I forgot. Wash my brush out so you don't make a green with the yellow and blue. And I'm just going to really make that quite see-through, and then just go over it and knock it back. You see, you can just see a little bit of blue on there. And glazes are quite good because you can do as much as you want really, or as little as you want. You can just build your glaze up in a few little layers. And with doing it a little bit bluer at the top as well, you're making that part go away from you. Because remember that your animal's round, isn't it? Genevieve, I usually, it depends. I could paint all day if I wanted to, and then then I get really tired at night. Sometimes I don't start till dinner time, and now that I've got a really good light, I can paint till about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and then I feel really tired, so I don't push it. But obviously, if you're doing something that you're really excited about, you want to paint a little bit more. So it depends really. Usually if I'm doing an underpainting on something, that'll take me all day. and I like to get that underpainting finished in the day, because then I want to start painting it properly the next day. So, but I'm like looking after my mum as well at the moment, so it depends what she needs first and foremost. So you see, I've just put a tiny little bit of, let's put this up a little bit. I've just put a little bit of blue on the top there, only very subtle. It doesn't have to be loads, and remember it's see-through, so you can still see the detail underneath. Yeah, just let me put the fan on because I'm getting a flush. That's it. So, now what I want to do, I want to put some shadows in because I haven't got a lot of depth in there. So I'm going to mix a little bit of raw umber with a touch of Payne's grey. I prefer the Payne's grey to the black. I think sometimes black is really for the end results here. And you've got, this sticks out above there, so I'm just going to put a little bit of shadow just around there. You're seeing it's still see-through, so you're still seeing your detail underneath, because you're going to use that, but what you're doing is starting to get a little bit of shadow around there now, a little bit more brown, so you're getting some depth instead of it being all flat. And I've just got a brush with about 20 points on, an old brush, because I'm not bothered about doing tiny bits. I just want to get it on really, and that's more towards the brown there. I've got a ridge around here. It's like this is separated from his body. And don't worry about going over highlights, because we'll put those back in. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to get a soft brush and soften that so I don't see any brush strokes. And all this needs to be dry before you start going over it, of course. If it wasn't, then it'd mix, which you don't want it to do. So again, we'll do a glaze. If I get time, I have oiled that tiger up from last week. I've done a little bit more on it, but I want to put a yellow glaze on. So I'll do that after, and then you can have another sea of glazes. But glazes are really, really handy. Just knock that back a little bit. And I'm just putting some little bits of colour, because in between these layers of hair that I've done on this pattern is just the raw umber of the canvas that I first did. So it's very sparse, this layer up to now. Even though it looks quite a lot, it isn't really. How many years have I been oil painting? Ooh, that's a hard one. I don't know really, not a lot. I mean, I've done watercolours since I was, all the time since I was young, and I'm 56 now. And I've only been oil painting for about 8 years, something like that. I did a little bit of oil painting, then I stopped for a long while, and then I came back to it about 4 years ago, I would say. 4 or 5 years ago. And then all I've done is adapt my watercolour style, really. Somebody told me that I paint in watercolours, paint in oils exactly like I do in watercolours, which I'd never really noticed before, because I always worried too much that I was doing it wrong. What I'm doing is I'm putting some little bits of raw umber around this fur now, just to make it look richer. It's quite dry on my brush, but because I'm putting it onto a surface that's got oil on, it's going to spread a little bit more, if you understand that. Because it looks a little bit sparse close up, so I want to make it richer. I'm not going over everything. I'm leaving some highlights out, but it's just starting to look a bit, what's the word, tuftier. That's a really good technical word. Right, and you're creating an illusion, remember. Then we've got a shadow under here, so I'm going to mix a little bit of Payne's Grey with that raw umber and put a shadow under there. I don't want it to be too brown, although that looks a little bit brown, because this is whiter fur under here, and that fur there I'm just knocking back. Remember, you can always come back and put highlights in. The white isn't white yet on here, so I've got that to come. I love putting the white highlights in. But you see, I'm just starting to get a little bit more depth in there now. Sometimes if you've got a space where you've got a bit too much oil, it hangs around in little beads. So if you just go over with a nice big soft brush, soften it out a lot. You know, you're creating that softness. That's what you're trying to do. It's not harsh fur, it's soft. And then I can do, I've got a smaller brush, and where we've got a separation here, I'm going again with the Payne's Grey and a little bit of raw umber. It's a bit weird this, because the camera's nearly on my forehead, so I'm having to look underneath it. And then I'm just going in a little bit more, just this is with a smaller brush, and I'm going in between. You're painting the negative bits. This is where my watercolours come in, because I suppose some oil artists will paint over the whole thing, but I can't bring myself to do that. So I tend to paint the negatives, which is painting the spaces in between, which is what I tell me watercolour classes. That's what you're doing. You're painting the negative shapes. You're painting the bits that the light can't get to. And you see you get more of a separation around there. If I move it, let's move it up a bit. Can you see? You're getting more of a separation. I don't know, Genevieve, really. If it is like that, I've never really studied the old masters that much. I've looked at them, but not studied them, because I find like colour theory and all that really boring. So I don't do it. I just do what I do. I think you can get into sort of studying techniques too much. Personally, that's my opinion. It's not the only opinion, of course, but I think really you can get into just studying all that too much, and then you worry about it, which you shouldn't. In my opinion, I just say, just paint it. Don't worry about it, don't stress over it, just paint it. I don't know if that's wrong, but that's what I do. I'm just softening and darkening, really, around there. If I get down a bit, you can see we've got the leg there. So again, what I want to do, what I've done is, if I go a bit further in, can you see all those little brush strokes? Those are just the pattern on the fur. That's what I've put on with light colour, and that's just a pattern in the fur. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and round it a little bit of, because it's quite brown down here. So if I just go over, try and exaggerate it a little bit more for you. Can you see how I'm darkening that? It's only very, very lightly, and you're not doing loads, but for me, I get a bit picky. It needs to be done, and that's it. And this is really all about, for me, it's all about the fur, because there's no eyes to really hone in onto. So again, I'm just going over that. Perhaps a little bit of a more of a darkness around there. And then lightening it off towards the top. So you see you've got a little bit of shadow at the bottom, and it sinks that detail in a little bit more as well. A little bit of a soft brush just to look there. A little bit of the blue, I think. And I'm only adding a little bit of white spirit with the colour. I'm not adding any more oil. You've got enough oil on, and if you add any more oil, it'll just be really soupy and horrible and too much. Bit of finger smudging, never did anyone any harm. Oops, a bit too much in there, so I'll just makes the coat look a little bit richer. And these dark markings, we can go back into that and darken that up at a later date. You don't really need to stress out too much about that, you know. But I think for me, if you want to get really nice plush fur, you need to do the layers, which I've stressed. You know, don't be too impatient with it. I've got a little bit more Payne's grey here, so I might as well darken these while I'm around here. This is just an old brush, there's no point on it, but it's darkening as much as I need. You know, I don't need anything with a point yet. I just need to really sort of darken it. Sometimes a good thing to do when you're doing a lot of fur is to turn it upside down and paint it that way, because I think sometimes you think too much about the fur instead of the textures and the patterns. So if you turn it upside down, you're just painting the pattern. You're not thinking of it as fur too much. See, I can lose myself in something like this, whereas other painters don't like the detail. But me, I can't wait to get to the detail. I love all that. Perhaps a little bit. I always work off an iPad as well, because then you can zoom in a lot more. So I've got a smaller brush here, and I'm just putting in some shadows where you've got layers of hair. This is a little bit different to the body hair around here. Still, I'm working quite dry actually. The paint's quite dry, but again, because you're putting it onto an oiled board, or canvas, sorry, the oil on the canvas is thinning it out and making it flow. Up here, layer it a little bit. It's the contrast between the darks and the lights that'll make it look busy. If you've not got a lot of contrast, it won't look busy. And then I'll come in a minute with some lights, and then you'll see the difference. Fingers crossed. Tell you what I'll do as well. Let's get some dark here. This is Payne's Grey. So this part of the ear is quite dark around there. Even though I've got a bit of detail on, you can still see that detail. So if you want it a bit darker, just go back in. That needs to be dark. This is why I say to you, you know, if you don't get the colour exactly right, don't worry about it, because we can put lots of layers on to get that colour. Starting to look a bit plusher now. It was looking sparse because there was only one layer of detail on there. A little bit more. I've got Payne's Grey on here now. Let's leave that. Okay, but you see how plusher it's all starting to look around there. Just having a look at some questions. No, I don't wait months, Genevieve. I wait until it's dry. My layers are really thin. When you make wait months, I think it was when they were all really quite thick, but usually a couple of weeks to dry, and then I varnish it, which takes about a week and a half to dry. The stuff that we have now is totally different. It's different to what was around years and years ago. I know some people leave it for 6 months, but I think it depends how many layers and how thick those layers are. But mine are really thin, so it's not going to crack because they're really thin. And I think with all the mediums you've got nowadays, all this fat over lean or lean over fat theory, I just totally ignore. Don't tell anyone that. So I'm just putting a little bit more raw umber there, because all that's too dark. Yeah, colour theory, Sarah, is a killer. And it bars the pants off me. So I just paint. I think as you go you learn about colour mixes. You could mix one colour shade and give the exact recipe to someone else, and they could mix completely different tone. It depends on your paints and everything, the way you hold your mouth. Right, let's see if I can put some lights in. So I'm going to get liner brush, fine brush, you always glaze darker before doing the next layer. I've never thought about that. I just do what I need, really. I suppose you do. I mean, sometimes you don't. You can, if you want to change your colour, like in this tiger that I've got ready, oiled up, I'm going to put a yellow glaze over it, which I'll show you, which is a light glaze, isn't it? I wouldn't glaze over with anything opaque like Naples yellow and white, because you'll put like a grey sheen over it, really. So right, I'm coming in with highlights. So I've got Naples yellow and white. Try and get around this camera. Turn the fan off. Right, so we'll do some of this hair here. And the hair's going this way, so you've got to paint this way. Right, to have a... No, that's not looking like anything. Put a little bit more medium in with that. So we've got some little... That's not light enough still. Put a little bit more white in. Again. So you just test it out on your painting first. You could see I took 2 or 3 times to get the right colour there. And we can do some little hairs coming over. I think when you start painting in oils, people tend to stress too much. Are they doing it right? Which is what I did. Because, like I said, I didn't know anything about oils, and I went to an oil painting class to find out what to mix them with, because I was only used to watercolour. So just let me get my mouth stick. I've got paint all over the back of my hand. So I just went for one term to find out. It's just this. I've got this mouth stick. I just went to find out what to mix with it. That's all. So I wasn't mixing it with water and dipping it in my mouth like I do with watercolours. And then I think you can learn so much at a class. Don't like that there. Let's put it on here. And then I think you learn more as you go and make mistakes. You can't learn if you don't make mistakes. See, we've got some little bits of fur coming out here. So you're putting your highlights back in. So you thought, I thought I'd got your highlights there, but when I came back to it, this is why I like to leave my paintings and come back to it after a few weeks, because things stand out that I didn't see before. And you think, oh, yeah, that needs to be changed. I'm going back in with a little bit of white. Don't like that mouth stick, so... So you've got some little highlights. And again, there's a tiny little bit of Naples yellow with this. This isn't the whitest white. See, that's looking a little bit more plusher now. And then this is like a woolly sort of coat that lays in tufts, if you will. So we can go back over here. It's definitely looking a bit thicker now than it was. I thought it was thick enough before, but when I did come back to it, I thought, oh no. That looks as if can't be bothered finishing it. That's some. And because you've still got that oil on, your paint's going to go on a little bit easier, flow a little bit better. I used to, when I did watercolours a lot, I used to paint a lot of wet in wet. I used to paint on hot press paper because I was sort of brought up with illustration. That's what I trained as. Size is your thin brush. It's, let me have a look, I've got some new ones here. It's a Roseman's Brushes, Series 230, 10/0. I find these fine liners really good. I don't tend to go through these fine liners as much as I do other brushes, so they must be tough. And there's a little bit of light fur in the middle of this marking. And I think, you know, having trained as an illustrator, you tend to look at every little bit of detail. And again, you know, you're doing the texture on it. I can't sort of tell you how long it'll take me because I do tend to leave them and then come back to them after a few. I tend to get them 3/4 of the way finished. Then I'll leave them for a few months. Then I'll come back to them. But like I said with this one, because there's no eyes to concentrate on or as a focus in the painting, I've got to really go in with the detail on this. So I have been filming this when I've remembered. So I will put, because I did put the underpainting on YouTube, on my channel. Just that there's some little hairs showing in that dark mark, and it's like a mottled sort of look to it. This is from a reference by David Whelan. He's in Australia, so he takes a lot of pictures of Mishka. Some beautiful pictures there. Then I'm going to go in with a lot more white to show you what you can do when you're lifting. You can lift it, just touches of it out. I can hear all the rain on my skylight. I just exaggerate it a touch. Just on perhaps bits that come out a little bit. And like I say, you're not painting hairs, it's a real thick, plush, like woolly coat. Can you see those little highlights? Were you able to see those little highlights of colour? They're not yet white. You know, I haven't really gone in with the whites yet. But they'll stand out. Just exaggerate it a little bit. Can you see that? How just picking those little bits of white, like on the tips of the chunks of fur, that those are the little bits of white that really sort of pull out because you've put some more darks on underneath. Let me have a look at some questions. Who's that? Oh, thanks, Genevieve. I love you. The canvases are already primed, so I don't gesso them at all because I'm lazy. I I just get them primed. I think if you put too many layers of gesso on, it becomes a bit just like a plastic surface. So I think if you put some really thin layers on, that's a lot better. But I mean, you can get them all primed now. I suppose if you were going over a painting that you've done that you don't want, if you want to reuse boards, you're going to have to put gesso on. But I would put them on in thin layers and sand them. I did get some Michael Harding gesso primer to try, and that was quite good. I've got a big pot of that. And then I threw canvases away, took them to the tip. So again, with the white paint, we've got some hairs down here. See how it's starting to get more texture up here now? It's looking a little bit separate. So there's a little bit of see, there's too much white spirit in that. So it just, when I put that line on, it just swum all over. So there's too much white spirit in that, so I'll put a little bit more paint in. I can't remember where I went now. There. This is the part that I really like. Can't stand the layers getting up to this, because sometimes I get really put off if it's not looking anything and I think, oh, it's a load of rubbish, this, and I want to start it again. So sometimes I've got to really sort of persevere. Now another thing I've got a really thin brush of this liner brush. I put that, can you see this one is a lot thinner, and it's a 20/0, same series 315, but it's very, very thin. So if I want to put some really thin hairs, I can do it with this brush. And where you've got a really thick woolly coat on a snow leopard, you've got some really nice fine hairs waffing around, another technical term. So we can just put some really fine hairs. That's a bit too much, I'll just soften that. Sometimes if I think it's too harsh, I'll soften it with a soft brush. I've lots of soft brushes, mainly my sable brushes from watercolour painting that are a bit blunt have now seconded as softening brushes. Whoops, that's a bit too much. See there, you're getting some nice edges. Whoops. I bring some it's because I'm pushing down too hard, so I'm getting a thicker line, because I'm getting a bit excited. If I bring that bit closer, can you see all that nice sort of jumbly hair? When I can afford it, I'll have to invest in a webcam that zooms. I have to sell more calendars for that. Put some more light stuff on here. Got that smaller. As this fur comes down towards his chest, there, then these, you know, are longer lines. This is longer fur. So you're doing like a little crisscross. Remember, your whites will stand out, your highlights will stand out. So if you want to pull bits of fur out to make it look as if it's sticking out, then your whites will do this. But those should be left towards the end, because you don't want your white mixing too much with your darker colours, because that's when it all looks a bit chalky. Again, a little bit of jumbliness. Oh, you're really getting these technical terms today. Okay, so that's a lot about, you know, a little bit of the detail. It doesn't, you don't do it straight away. If I put it round here, you can see here, you can see the raw umber between those bits of fur, because I haven't gone into the depth of that yet. And then you can see my underpainting there, which is a bit yucky. And you can see the difference with here, with building it up. Let each layer dry. Don't be too impatient with it, because if you don't, and you want to paint in and paint in, you'll lose all that definition. You can see we've got a little bit of definition at the top. So I'll start to go in with darker little bits, and then I'll put the highlights on. I'll knock all that back at the top, make it a little bit darker. Not right at the end, Sarah. I'd took more white in than anything else. I'll probably leave the highlights, the really white bits, until the end. Alright. So what I'll do now is, I'll put a glaze on this tiger. And then you can see how I was wanting to put like a yellow on that. So just, it's quite big, this one. Put that on there. Let's get this tiger. Right. Can't do it that way because it's Lily the pug behind there. So let me get this. Oh, do it around there. Right, so this tiger, all that was like quite a lot of Naples yellow and white, but what I want it all really quite yellowy orange. So what I did, I oiled it up before, because I knew I was going to go over it with some paint, just to show you a bit more about the glazes. And I'm not going to use Naples yellow to go over it, because Naples yellow is quite opaque, I find. I'm going to use a little bit of yellow ochre and a cadmium yellow. I'll try it. If it doesn't work, then we'll think of something else. Right? And then this part around here is too Naples yellowy for me. So, see, I'm going to go over. Now it's dried, it's had a week to dry. See how that's changed that? Might put a bit more orange in actually. Or a bit of burnt sienna. Let's put some burnt sienna out on the table. Let's put a bit of burnt sienna. Because I want to leave that white around his eyebrow. And you see? So we've got a bit of a glow on it. Now the detail, you're not losing the detail underneath. It's just changing it. It looks a bit weird on the video on my screen of it. It's not actually that yellow. It's more towards an orangey colour. And I'm going to put it over there as well. And then just using a moppy brush, because then the whites of the nose, oh, that was good. So you can still see all that nice detail. Oh. But I want it to be quite like a yellow glow, and then the whites of the eyebrows and the nose stand out a little bit. The back will be, will have white there, but you see how you can get quite a good little glaze going on compared to that side. Yeah. And then you can go back in with your detail, go back in with the darks, because you know you can switch between glazes and then detail, but always make sure it's dry underneath. If you don't, you'll just get into a right mess. And it's quite good as well for if you want, say this was quite a dark painting and you want it to disappear into the distance at the back, say it was all dark down there, you could do it that way and put your detail in and then put your darks in and let them fade out towards the front. You know, you go between your detail and your glazes. I can still see all my pencil lines here, so I'll put on top of that, but the colour was bugging the backside off me, so that's why I thought, oh, I'll put some glazes on there, and then I'll just let it dry for a week. And again, this is why I have so many on the go. You know, I don't like to rush them. I don't just like to churn them out. They're all a labour of love. Sound a bit romantic there. Just take that off the white. You know, you can put like little glazes over the eyes as well. You know, you don't have to mix that colour straight away. A little bit of brown here. But you see, with putting my glazes on here, then I've lost a little bit of the detail because it's a lot more muted now. So I'll come back into that. You know, which I don't mind. That's my happy place. But we're a lot more yellow there, which is what I wanted. See how I sort of softened it around there. Okay, so is there any more questions about that? Short one today, well, short, so I don't waffle on too much and people fall asleep. Let me have a look, see if there's any more questions. I think that's it. Is there any more questions? No. I'll show you, I'll put this other tiger that I was doing last night. There we go. It's rather big. I won't actually get it in there. Take that off. I've always wanted to do a massive tiger head. I'll have to put this. That's off, it doesn't fall. So this reference came to me. Oh. Oh. Let me put these brushes down. I'll just knock my palette off. Let me get hold of this. off. This, I've only done one half, sort of starting to do one half of it. Perhaps put the light back on. But it's, can you see around the edges? We've got some raindrops. And then at the top we've got bits of raindrops on his head. This is called After the Rain. So, but there's really some nice blues in that. And I've started to do the detail in here. There'll be a lot of white whiskers coming out there. So all this will be knocked back. But at the moment, can you see, that's, for me, that's too light at the moment because it's going into a shadow under here. That's what, that's the theory. Of course, I haven't done any of this yet. So when that's dry, what I'll do is I'll knock that back with some dark paint and some blues, because there's a lot of blues. You can't really see it on the video, but there's a lot of blues on there. This isn't finished yet because if you see, I've only just started doing that, so it's a little bit softer, so it needs a lot more hairs on there. And then this will all be soft here, which is starting to do, going into the shadow under there. And there'll be a little bit of light, that's still the underpainting. There'll be a little bit of light there, and you can see the underpainting colour here, and all the underpainting, still got all that to do. So still, you know, and I've got the nose to do, that's the underpainting colour as well. But there's some really nice blues going on here, which I'm quite excited about this one, because of the rain. If you see, can you see the raindrops and everything on him? And those bits at the top, you can still see my pencil lines, so those will have to come out, but there's not enough hair in the ear either, because I was doing a bit up here and then a bit down here and a bit down here, because I get bored in one place, so I move about a bit. But as you can see, there's some, you see the raindrops on the side of his fur there, so quite excited about that. That's called After the Rain, this one. This is from a reference from Al Bilby, my personal photographer. Okay, and that's it really. Oh, thank you, Karen. I'm really, I like it. It's a bit of a challenge, all this as well. That's my iPad. It's a bit of a challenge, all this as well, getting it to sort of come out at the bottom. It's like a push-pull effect, which is what you use glazes for. You see, in this bit here as well, this goes round under the head, so I've sort of glazed some blue over there to put it as, the blue's not showing up very nice on the video actually. It's a lot more subtle than that, but quite nice. But I like Nick Sider's work, and he does a lot of big tiger heads, and I've always wanted to do one. So I was just waiting for the right one, which is what I got off I begged and borrowed. So, okay. Is there any more questions? It's okay, Sarah, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for watching. I will post this on my YouTube channel after, if I can remember how to do it again. Okay. Thank you, everyone.